Hi, thank you for joining us and welcome to this installment of David W. Klossing's Clarifying Tax Situations.
What are effective tax defense counsel's goals in an Eggshell audit? In a typical Eggshell audit, criminal defense counsel is concerned with two things: averting the emergence of a criminal investigation. It's one thing to be audited for understatements of income. That's about money and possibly a 20% negligence penalty. It's quite another to have that audit turn into a criminal investigation for tax evasion or other assorted tax crimes, where it's not about money anymore, it's about possible jail time. So in an Eggshell audit, that's the risk. In a reverse Eggshell audit, counsel is trying to discover if there's an ongoing clandestine criminal tax proceeding involved within the audit. It's quite possible that the auditor comes out to do an audit. They've either got marching orders from the Criminal Investigation Division or the Department of Justice to look for an underlying criminal issue as part of that audit, or they could be completely flying blind and not even know that the superiors who assign the audit know that there's a potential criminal issues, but a lot of times they're sent in blind, they don't even know. Still, criminal defense counsel has to figure that out. One of the ways that we limit the damage in a potential Eggshell audit is to control the amount of information and the dialogue that comes out of our client's mouth. The most damning evidence that can ever be presented to a jury in a criminal prosecution are lies that come out of our client's mouth, or evidence that the client knew what they were doing was illegal to reduce their tax liability. They did so willfully, and that's a crime called income tax evasion. Or the return contains lies, that's tax perjury. Or the return is misleading, that could be obstruction. There's lots of different tax crimes surrounding tax filings. All right? We're most concerned with protecting your constitutional rights. Okay? This is things that only attorneys are trained in. Okay? No other tax professional is trained in constitutional law or in criminal tax procedure. We're looking to protect your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. One of the most powerful things we can do is, if we believe there's nothing you can say in the face of the investigation, the agent has shown us enough badges of fraud, or the Criminal Investigation Division has shown up on the scene, flashed a badge that says IRS Criminal Special Agent on it, they're carrying a gun, they have handcuffs on them. Most often the best course of action is allow our client to say nothing. If they pin you down with a summons, it may be necessary to only answer questions with, "I claim the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and I have nothing to say." What you're doing is forcing them to establish any criminal tax behavior with evidence other than what you have to say. We also want to protect you against unreasonable searches and seizures. This normally comes into play through the audit summons procedure, where possibly they could be asking you for every record under the sun. You could have an overly broad summons, and possibly we could fight back the summons to just information that you could realistically produce, not things that are outside your control. What are the possible outcomes of an Eggshell audit? There are generally three possible outcomes of an Eggshell audit. Number one, the revenue agent does not consider the misstatements found and adjustments made during the audit to be caused by fraud, and thus does not discover the underlying criminal tax issues. Well, this is the best result. If we can push an audit straight through the civil process without them discovering that fraud took place, that is the best possible result. That doesn't mean they're not going to find the underlying problems in the return. They most likely will. But what we're doing is preventing them from having the evidence to know that those misstatements were willful and intentional rather than just negligence or a mistake. The evidence on that normally turns from what the client says, okay? And you gotta be careful because your body language can say things that you don't realize it says. Second possible result. The revenue agent discovers misstatement that they suspect might have been caused by fraud, but because of effective lawyering, the agent is inclined to keep the matter purely a civil examination because of a lack of proof of criminal intent. Now, this is not as good a result as the first approach, but I'll take it. Even if they suspect fraud, if I can get you through that civil audit, get it closed, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll keep a continuing relationship with these clients that committed fraud, And I will make sure they don't do it again in the future, that they keep their nose clean in the future, they stay between the lines, and there's no problems going forward, because frankly, I will not let a client commit fraud on my watch. If they try it, I will end the relationship, especially when they got through a civil audit where they had committed fraud and didn't get busted for it. The last possible result, the revenue agent makes a referral to what's called a technical fraud specialist. There's 2 of them in California that I know of. Their job is to liaison between the criminal tax function, which has about 10% of the agents in California that the civil side has. Probably less than 10%. I'd probably say like 4% of the agents. Frankly, their job is to work up the civil audit and say, is this right for a criminal investigation? Are the badges of fraud there? And once that handoff takes place between technical fraud analyst and the criminal investigation division, any bets on whether you'll go to jail or not are off. If there is a referral, they're going to work with the criminal investigation function of the IRS, CI, and those guys have a 96% conviction rate. How can an eggshell audit result in fraud not being discovered, or if found, the case remaining civil anyways? Well, that's the art of the representation in a situation like this. First of all, taxpayers facing an eggshell audit should only be represented by an experienced criminal tax defense counsel. Okay? You're looking at one of them. There are plenty of others that do what I do. First of all, someone experienced with it, and most importantly, an attorney. You'll get to understand why. Or if you're going to work with a CPA, that CPA better be hired on a Covell letter by the attorney. Therefore, the communications with that CPA are privileged under the attorney's attorney-client privilege as a member of their staff. The CPAs that work for me are Covell accountants. That's the role they're fulfilling within my company. Covell is an interesting case. In Covell, this happened in 1961. What happened was there was an ex-IRS employee that left the IRS, went to work for a criminal tax defense counsel firm, and got involved with helping that firm represent clients that had committed tax crimes in civil audits. IRS decided, aha, this person is not an attorney. They don't have attorney-client privilege. They tried to subpoena them to the witness stand to learn what they knew about the tax crimes committed by the clients the firm was representing. Frankly, they took it all the way to district court, and what came out of that case is if you have an accountant that's working directly for an attorney, it's part of their legal function, and therefore the work of that accountant is subject to the attorney-client privilege. The original preparer should never provide representation in an eggshell audit. They don't have attorney-client privilege. They're government witness number 1, and frankly, they have a conflict of interest in that they have their own reputation to protect, and they may damage your reputation in trying to save their own. They can't be trusted not to be more concerned with protecting their own reputation than being concerned with helping you avoid criminal prosecution. Okay, if you're facing an eggshell audit, you need to hire tax counsel that can do the following. Number 1, they need to be able to advise you exactly how to comply with an auditor's data request. Okay? Every request can elicit fraud. The auditor's questioning of you and your staff. Okay, first of all, if I can prevent it, I don't want them talking to anybody that's committed fraud, if possible. If I can't prevent it, then a whole bunch of preparation has to go into the type of questions you might get, what a correct answer is, what a wrong answer is, how not to lie in a situation, but yet tell your story in a way that doesn't elicit a criminal admission. There's going to be summons of records. You need somebody that can protect your Fourth Amendment privilege against unreasonable searches and seizures if those summonses are overly broad or they ask for something that's not within your control or power to produce. You need someone that understands all their investigation techniques and how to protect you from the likely discovery that comes from those techniques. You need someone to prevent you from making criminal admissions. Lying in a criminal investigation or in an audit, anytime you're talking to a civil agent, is a felony in and of itself. If you get caught lying or providing false information, you can inadvertently waive your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination or your Fourth Amendment privilege against unreasonable searches and seizures. The Criminal defense counsel's largest concern in Eggshell audit is dissuading the examining agent from referring the case for criminal prosecution. You got to remember that CID's primary mission is to deter the general public from committing tax crimes by prosecuting a sample of taxpayers who have been caught cheating to make an example of them. Our system only functions if there's a certain element of fear out there amongst taxpayers. If everybody out there believed they could cheat and get away with it at will, the tax deficit that's caused by cheating would go 100-fold overnight. The government has to keep people afraid so they pay their taxes. How do they do that? Through criminal prosecutions that hit you where you live, okay? If you're an attorney, seeing another attorney go to jail for tax fraud, it touches you. If you're a CPA, seeing another CPA go to jail for aiding and abetting income tax evasion hits you where you live. This is how a civil audit goes criminal. Once a revenue agent discovers significant and affirmative indications of fraud during a civil audit, first step, he's going to contact their manager, report it upstream. Once he gets his manager's approval, he's going to refer the case to a fraud referral specialist. The fraud referral specialist works directly with the auditor to develop what's called a fraud development plan. The sole purpose of the fraud development plan is to document the affirmative acts of fraud, the badges of fraud that were found in the underlying audit, prepare the case for referral to the Criminal Investigation Division of the IRS. Once the case is referred to the Criminal Investigation Division of the IRS, that's all they wrote, all she wrote, 96% conviction rate if they complete the investigation. So, criminal tax defense counsel needs to know the following: how to weigh the benefit of continuing to cooperate with the civil revenue agent in light of underlying criminal issues, how much cooperation to give, whether to claim the Fifth Amendment privilege. The whole idea is to quell the agent's suspicion before a referral is made, or alternatively, choose to advise the client to remain silent to prevent them from self-incriminating themselves. Claim the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. The worst thing that can happen in one of these audits is the client admits to tax fraud or makes statements that the auditor later proves to be false, which amounts to a felony in and of itself. It's a felony to lie to a federal agent, and you know what? That's a felony before or after a referral is made. One of the trickiest things to do in a reverse eggshell audit is to determine if there's an underlying criminal investigation going on in what appears to be a plainly civil audit. Well, there is some questioning that defense counsel can direct to the agent to try and elicit this. Number one, you could just flat out say, is there an open criminal investigation underneath this fact pattern? Well, that's a dangerous question to ask. If they didn't suspect fraud, guess what? They'll start suspecting fraud after you ask that question. Is there an underlying grand jury investigation? You can ask that. Is there an associated technical fraud advisor? Is there an associated special agent behind this case? Are you dealing with the Criminal Investigation Division? Each of these questions achieves a different objective in an eggshell audit versus a reverse eggshell audit. In an eggshell audit, this line of questioning becomes necessary to protect the taxpayer, but must be asked in such a manner as to not raise the auditor's suspicion that fraud exists in the client's fact pattern. If a reverse eggshell audit is underway, this line of questioning can protect the taxpayer because it will alert the counsel to the existence of a clandestine criminal tax investigation. Or if the revenue agent provides more than just a tacit denial of the existence of a parallel criminal investigation, subsequent information and statements may be suppressible under TWEAL. One of the strongest protections available to criminal tax defense counsel is found under TWEAL, depending on where you're at in the country. There is some current questioning whether TWEAL is good law in the Ninth Circuit right now. It's where we are in California. But in other parts of the nation, it's still good law. In TWEAL, it was held that where an auditor did more than just tacitly deny that there was an underlying criminal investigation going on when they knew there was one, And it's something beyond a tacit denial, actually deceiving the taxpayer and deceiving the representative into thinking it was a straight civil situation, when indeed it wasn't a civil situation, it was a criminal situation disguised as a civil audit. It was held in that case that if they crossed that line, that the evidence gained in that civil investigation may be suppressible at a subsequent criminal trial. So, if a revenue agent lies when asked whether there's an underlying criminal investigation in a straight civil situation, and he says, no, there's no parallel investigation underway, or there's no technical fraud advisor in this case, no, I'm not working with anybody from the Criminal Investigation Division, this action can be sufficient to make that evidence suppressible. These lies by the auditor can be sufficient to make the evidence gained in that civil audit suppressible at a subsequent criminal trial. The next few cases I'm going to discuss that control in this area of law show why practicing in this area is so tricky. You really got to know your stuff. On the one hand, there's a case called Toussaint. What that case says is, if there's a lie by an auditor where they say, no, this is a straight civil situation, there is no underlying criminal investigation, and they're lying, the evidence may be suppressible under Toussaint in a subsequent criminal prosecution. On the other hand, there's contrary hair-splitting law, which basically says, if their conduct is merely deceptive and it merely violates IRS procedure, but it's not outright lying, falls short of violating the U.S. Constitution or applicable federal statutes, the evidence collected by the auditor is admissible in a subsequent criminal prosecution. The case that says that is Caceres. This split in federal case law creates trepidation to attorneys in that it can go either way depending on how that continuum of behavior by the auditor is viewed by a subsequent reviewing body. Most criminal tax defense attorneys are of the opinion that when a taxpayer is under criminal investigation, there are indications within the IRS master file that will alert a criminal tax auditor of that fact. If they look at the codes, they can see within the records that there's an underlying criminal investigation, that a grand jury investigation is underway, that there's been an associated in technical fraud advisor, or that a special agent has been associated with the case. They can see this. So theoretically, if the auditors ask these questions, they have to either tell the truth or refuse to answer. In a case where these questions are asked and the auditor refuses to answer in the affirmative and guarantee you or assert that there's no criminal investigation, where they refuse to answer, I always assume, and most people in my line of work do, that an underlying criminal issue is there because they won't give you a denial of it. As you can see from the foregoing material, that a representative's failure to ask the right questions at the right time in an eggshell audit can totally put their client at jeopardy. You need to know when an eggshell audit is progressing into a reverse eggshell audit, when a referral has been made to a criminal investigation, when an auditor starts to clandestinely work with a technical fraud advisor. Theoretically, they're supposed to halt the civil audit at that point. Sometimes they don't, and that can be very damaging. Procedurally, they're off the reservation. That's what Tweel, Toussaint, and Caceres are all about. If a representative misses the juncture altogether, where all of a sudden auditor is believing that they're looking at fraud, and maybe they didn't see it at the beginning of the audit, that's very dangerous for the taxpayer if you're working with somebody that doesn't know the science. This can result in a permanent loss of a client's constitutional protections. Scarier yet, quite often in these situations, it's the original preparer that's representing the taxpayer. They're not an attorney, they're not trained in these constitutional protections, they're not trained in criminal tax defense, and they have a conflict of interest in the situation. So if you cheated and you know it, again, you shouldn't be there with the original preparer, you should be there with a tax attorney. There are several procedures this office follows in an eggshell audit. Representing a client in an eggshell audit situation is art, not science, okay? But you really can't script it. A lot of it is based on instinct and experience. First of all, we've said it before, we'll say it again, no criminal admissions. We need to limit the client's involvement in an audit where they cheated in taking a position in the underlying return. If our client does have to be interviewed, we want to make sure that they're thoroughly prepared for the interview process and they do not make criminal admissions or undermine their case through their own words or actions during that interview. Any interviews scheduled to take place in the client's business establishment or in their home, we ordinarily like to try and remove from those locations and into our office, if at all possible. At home, they could be looking at your standard of living. In your office, it's hard to control what third parties say and what access to information they have. We typically don't want the client or any of their employees present during an office tour. Our office will thoroughly document any damaging or critical positions taken by the auditor during an audit. Subsequent to the examination, we may submit a FOIA request under the Freedom of Information Act. The idea here, if there's an underlying criminal investigation, ordinarily the FOIA will be missing a whole bunch of information. If you know there's 800 pages of information in their file, you only get 300 and you see the words redacted all over the place, it's a pretty good indication there's an underlying criminal issue. If an auditor doesn't ask for information, we're not going to provide it to the auditor. We're not going to send them looking in areas that they're not asking about in an underlying Eggshell audit. In an Eggshell audit, we're only going to provide the information the auditor asks for. We make sure our clients are thoroughly educated on obstruction and tax perjury, two most common actions that could get our client in trouble even if the fraud isn't discovered. We remain calm and professional when discussing a client's case with the auditor. It's very important to have a rapport with the IRS agent. Representatives have reputations with the taxing authority. We believe we have a good reputation with the taxing authorities. I teach all my staff the expression that credibility is like virginity, you can only lose it once. I strive to maintain my credibility with the taxing authorities, which means I don't lie to them. I don't mislead them. It's art, not science, but there's a way to get through these situations without possibly raising the specter of a criminal investigation, even if there's potential criminal issues in the underlying return. We maintain a rapport with the IRS agents. They tend to respond better to sugar than they do vinegar. Our office is not afraid to have our client claim the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination in appropriate circumstances. Again, where appropriate, it's better to remain silent, claim the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination than have all the damning words come right out of your mouth that are going to be presented to a jury that will result in a criminal tax conviction. Believe it or not, the damage caused by you claiming the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination in causing the civil auditor to push it into a criminal issue can be much less than the damage that can be caused by you saying the wrong thing at the right time, leading to a criminal investigation for sure. Please keep in mind that the wrong thing said at the right time can cause you to waive your Fourth Amendment privilege against unreasonable searches and seizures and your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. Thank you for watching this tape.
Thank you so much again for your time and interest in how we may be able to help you. Please don't hesitate to call if something is worrying you. We would be very happy to help. Just call or email for a reduced rate consultation.